So, back to Holbein and his portrayal of Henry VIII. We all know it well. There are several versions copied from Holbein's original, which was actually a life-size mural painted to grace the Privy Chamber at the Palace of Whitehall. The palace, unfortunately, was destroyed by fire in 1698. Nonetheless, reproductions of that image were in circulation, and it became the template for most of the impressions that followed. And so we are left with this imposing image of a supremely confident-looking man, towering above all those who stood about him, likely to face down those who even dare think about defiance of his sovereignty. And although the images are silent, from somewhere in this portrayal is a great booming voice of authority. In addition, this depiction has attracted accusations of gluttony, drunkenness, fornication, and even lechery. 500 years later, and that portrayal hasn't really changed.
I'm mad for you. I dream of you at night. I long for you by day. I'm no good with any other woman. I think of nothing but you. Of you and me playing dog and bitch. Of you and me playing horse and mare. Of you and me in every way. I want to fill you up, night after night. I want to fill you up with sons.
Bastards. They would be bastards.
One word more and I'll strike you. One word more.
Without marriage, if you and I have sons, they will be bastards.
This is Henry's Psalter, his private book of psalms, which includes annotations in his own hand. It is likely, as a devout Christian, this small book would have accompanied him where'er he went. Today it's kept in the British Library, and to quote from its description of the exhibit, it is said, "Commissioned by Henry VIII, this Psalter is the most sumptuous production of the French scribe and illuminator Jean Mallard. Several images depict Henry as King David. The annotations in Henry's own hand show how strongly he identified with the godly Old Testament king." And so, to my mind, for a portrayal of the king, the Psalter deserves as much, if not more, attention than the Holbein work, and all those copies that came after Holbein. Unlike the copyists, the Frenchman Mallard does not follow the German Holbein in his perception and portrayal of Henry VIII. Every picture tells a story, don't it? Why then is it that we continue to accept the hardman Henry version over and above the more simple and thus probably more accurate and certainly more personal portrayal of the man who was Henry VIII?
The drama event of the year reaches its shattering conclusion.
I am your king, only as long as I allow you to live.
Ray Winston and Sean Bean star in the ITV drama premiere, Henry VIII, Sunday at 9 on ITV1.
I think it's fair to say that portrayal is more in the style of Holbein than Mallard. But what is Henry VIII famous for, apart from that Holbein painting and everything that flowed from it? How do we know him? What do we know of the man himself? This man, the product of a German portrait artist, this oh-so-famous king. But what was the man's legacy? What part did Henry Tudor really play in the history of England? Did he really play the lead? Or was he just a bit part player? Well, he had 6 wives. He was inclined towards sport when he was young, and then probably ate and drank too much as he aged, which caused him serious and probably terminal health problems. He was beyond all doubt religious and a lifelong Catholic. What else? He had a son with a mistress, Elizabeth Blount, years before the future Edward VI was born. But aside from that, there's not a great deal more to add about the man who was Henry VIII, save to say he was something of a gullible nitwit. Of all the historians who have studied the Tudor period, one of the finest and most prolific was Sir Geoffrey Elton. Sir Geoffrey wrote extensively about the history of the 16th century, producing invaluable work on the Constitution, the law, the Reformation, of course, and even the discipline of history itself. But when he turned his attention to the man that was Henry VIII, well, he covered that subject in just 27 and a bit pages. And they were small pages at that. Yes, this is it. Within these few pages, he says, we surely cannot accept an argument, unsupported by evidence, which ascribes to Henry VIII alone the mastery of events, the making of policy, and the detailed and specific government of the country. Unsupported by evidence, says Sir Geoffrey. Quite a charge indeed. But he was quite right. There is no evidence, not a scintilla of it. And for that very reason, this series is not about Henry VIII, the man. It's about the reign of Henry VIII and the people who did have mastery of events, the people who did make policy, the people who did set down the detail specifically for the government of the country, and the people who arranged all 6 of his political marriages. Now, to put Henry in his proper place, which is on the sidelines and for the most part looking in the wrong direction, does not change the occurrence of events. The 6 marriages, the divorces, the execution, the death in childbirth and the survival, they all happen. The wars and the peace with France, the lack of a legitimately born heir, the break from Rome, the pilgrimage of grace, the dissolution of the monasteries, so on and so forth. It all happened. But the reasoning behind so much of the decision-making during the reign of Henry VIII is difficult to understand, and in many areas still lacks adequate explanation. Much of the government of the kingdom during his reign appears to be, well, nonsensical. You turn this way, I'll turn that. France is our enemy. No, France is our friend. No, wait, France is our enemy again. All be Catholics, then all be Protestants, then all be halfway in between. Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survive. Those 6 wives. How do you make sense of that? That and so many other idiosyncrasies. There is a way. Actually, it's more akin to a well-trodden path, but there is a way to avoid deeper explanation, and it was devised to disguise the nonsense. Quite simple, really. What you do is you apply the word tyrant to Henry VIII. Now, once you've done that, any square peg will fit in any round hole, and vice versa. His tyranny explains all that occurred. No. That is too easy, and it's too simple, and frankly serves merely to brush the facts under the carpet, and as a consequence renders the history all the more bizarre. In a completely new look, this series takes us from the early 1500s to the dissolution legislation at the end of the Reformation Parliament in 1536. It will show in particular that the break from Rome was not a consequence of any desire that Henry VIII might have had to marry Anne de Boleyn, otherwise known as Anne Boleyn. In this, the first episode titled The State of Christendom, we will look at the rulers on the continent of Europe at the turn of the 16th century and examine the balance of power and geography, all of which set the stage for one of the most dramatic episodes in the history of England. we will familiarise ourselves with the dynastic ambitions of Catherine of Aragon's Trastamara family, the enormous territories of the Habsburgs of Austria and Germany, the domineering Valois of France, and the hitherto ambitious Tudors of England, and of course the vast spiritual and temporal authority of the papacy. In amongst all the dynastic grandeur, there was one man, a commoner, a layman, who rose to incredible heights, drawn by an insatiable desire for power. The power that he craved had been created over centuries. This man was Thomas Wolsey, and the power that he craved was that of the papacy, the papal office. He wanted to be Pope, and it was that insatiable lust for authority that ultimately led to the overturn of the old medieval order. And so in this series, titled An Old Tale of Wives, let us begin to understand the course of events.